trucker. Performance and history. You guys have people you already work with. You know which ones are good and not good. Get recommendations. Don't discount recommendations you made if you're buying at an auction. Check with the auctioneer, see who he recommends. It's in his interest that you guys get the stuff out quickly and safely. So definitely check recommendations and do your history. Also use asset-based companies. Not all the time, but it's good to have asset-based companies. Companies that actually own trucks, not just brokers. We use brokers and we use our trucks and we use other people's trucks. But if you have a very critical, sensitive shipment, you may want to use an asset-based company, a company that physically owns the truck that can commit to get it there. An example is if you've got a 500-ton crane on the job and you're loading the heavy press and the rigging crew is costing you $12,000 a day to be out there, you want to make sure you've got somebody who has a truck. So always use asset-based companies. How time-sensitive is the need? This is where if they're picking up in your warehouse and they're delivering to your customer and he's unloading, you don't have a rigger set up at either end, you can take a little bit more risk there if you want to go with a broker or somebody that you haven't used in the past. I'll repeat that several times. Hopefully you'll get it. Stay with what works during sensitive shipments. Again, for examples, if you have riggers out there on the site and it's the last day, you want to make sure you have somebody that you know that's going to get there. Try to, and I know a lot of you guys don't like to do it, you like to leave your stuff at the site as the last day, the last piece, but try and get your stuff booked prior to the last day of shipment. Because if your truck doesn't show up, and I'm loading trucks there all week, and I have it scheduled for Wednesday, and your truck doesn't show up, but I'm going to be there until Friday, that gives you a little bit of cushion so that you're not getting penalized for a crew sitting there waiting. A new trucker, a new broker, a guy who gave you a good rate on this one, don't use them when it's time sensitive. When we confirm our trucks, whether it's a broker or a carrier, we ask for the driver's name and phone number. So the way the broker industry works is they'll give you a rate, they'll accept your thing, they'll say we have a truck, they'll say we're scheduled for next Tuesday, and the whole time they're searching for a truck. They post it out on the internet, and truckers call them up and say, is that load available? Until you actually have a driver name and phone number, you really can't be sure what that broker's telling you is true, that they actually have a truck on your load. So you always want to try and get a name and phone number of the driver. We require it from our scheduler, and sometimes they won't give you the name and phone number of the driver. They say it's a policy or whatever, then try and get the dispatcher's phone number. This has happened to some of my clients before. When you're shipping oversized, over-dimensional, large presses, and you get 2 or 3 prices on oversized loads, and then you get the prices from brokers and asset-based companies, and somebody comes in at half the price, check it out. Confirm that they got a truck. I've had a customer pay $30,000 in delay charges for me waiting for trucks that are supposed to be showing up. So, if you get that number that's half the price, confirm it. Make sure they have a driver, make sure they have a truck, make sure they have a company that's actually covering it. What can I say or do during loading? Okay, how much liability do you want to accept? Remember, in the court of law, they're going to come back and they said it to us before, you are the professional. So you guys as the machinery dealers, you're professionals. There's a certain amount of professional knowledge that you're supposed to have that when you put something on a truck, that it's done in the right way. So even though you want to try and get out of certain liabilities, they're always going to come back and say, you're the professional. So whether it's a customer's truck or whether it's a truck you hire, you always have the right to stop somebody. So if you have a trucker that comes in, he wants to chain over the ways, he wants to do something that's obviously wrong, you go out there, you can stop him. If you see it, and you see it's happening, ultimately you're going to be responsible at some point in time, because you're, again, a professional that should know better. In other words, if you see it, the guy sends his truck in, the guy's chaining, and you say nothing and you walk away, you're going to be accepting some responsibility. As many of you know, today you go to court to settle, you don't go to court for justice. I mean, it's, they sue you, an arbitrator gets involved, and everyone ends up paying part of the claim whether you're responsible or not. When we make suggestions to the carriers, we'll have a trucker come in, and this guy could have just hauled lumber all of his life, never hauled a machine at all, and they send him in, some broker hires him. I'll always say, this is the way that I would do it, but I never tell them this is what you have to do. Because once I start telling them this is how you have to tie it down on the truck, now I'm accepting responsibility going down the road. So if I say you have to hook it through the holes in the bottom of the lathe, and you got to pull it forward, you got to pull it backwards, you start accepting responsibility, because when he goes down the road and he's doing 90 miles an hour around the turn and his truck tipped over, and we've had that example at 10 minutes to 4, the gate closes at the port at 4 o'clock, and the last turn coming into the port, truck flips over. So obviously he's trying to get in the gate. He's flying around the turn. The cargo was in containers, and he went too fast around the turn. Well, they came back and said it was improper packaging, improper securing. The cargo shifted. Well, for the 600 miles, it didn't shift. But at that last turn, going into port, 10 minutes before the gate closes, the truck rolls over. They can't tell whether the stuff was tied down, the strap broke or not, because the truck rolled down the bank. We ended up getting in the claim. We ended up settling because we get to a certain point with the arbitrators, and we can go to the next level. The claim was, I think the total claim was $75,000. The arbitrator says, okay, the shipper, or the owner, you pay a third, the rigger, you pay a third, the trucker, you pay a third. And that's what the arbitrator tries to settle. And we, say, no, we're going to go on principle. We're not going to do it. Our attorney says, we love you guys. It'll cost you $30,000 to go to the next level. What are you going to do? So we settle. Do you include freight in your sales price? We don't. Probably less than 10% of the time do we include freight. We always get 3 prices. So if we're doing the freight, we'll get 3 prices from 3 carriers. We'll always use the middle guy. We never use the low guy as the quote. Because if his truck's not available, you're paying more money and you're losing money on shipping for a customer. Always make sure your carrier is insured properly. So that again, as I talked about, it's a very important topic. There's lots of yellow freight, all those kind of freight companies out there. Used machinery is cents on a pound. That's how they insure it. They do not insure it for the value that you have. So when you're requesting your quotes, you've got to have declared values on your quote. They've got to sign your document. But it's very important that you know if your rigger is doing the trucking and he's trucking it on his truck, you got to make sure that he has beyond his general liability. General liability covers everything except your piece of equipment. So if a rigger's got $1 million general liability policy, like many of the auction companies, they'll require $1 million, $2 million, $5 million of general liability insurance for a rigger to work at their site. That's okay. That covers everything but your machine. It covers if they back into another machine. It covers the building if they burn it down. It covers if they run somebody over. But it doesn't cover your machine. So an auctioneer is typically only requiring insurance to cover the other liability on your machine. They should have motor truck cargo for what they're hauling on the truck, and they should have care custody for the piece they're working on. So if they don't have care custody or they don't have motor cargo in the amount to cover your equipment, you want to make sure you see that on their insurance certificate. And besides that, you also want to call on those insurance certificates. So here's a real life example. We've got a contractor working right next door to us, removing equipment. It's a pipe welding line. They make pipe there. And we bid the job. The price was, I think, 30% of our price. They came in from South Carolina. So we were a little bit involved. We got a hold of their insurance certificate. The guy's a lettuce farmer, okay? And he's got a general liability policy for $2 million as a lettuce farmer. And when he's slow, he does these plant clean-outs and does the different kinds of stuff. So if you have an insurance certificate that says D&K Incorporated, right? The insurance, you don't know if it says D&K Machinery Moving. At least you got an idea that the guys have got an insurance certificate for the right business. But I can go get an insurance certificate, and it happened a lot for many years. A guy will go get an insurance certificate and show up in a pickup truck with some tools at an auction site and start working, and it could be for trimming trees. And you get it, and it says $1 million of general liability, you actually think you're covered, and you're not even close to covered. Take a picture of the bill of lading first. We take a picture of the driver's door with his ICC number, then we take a picture of his license plate, and we start from the back, working our way around the truck, taking pictures, both loaded before it's tarped and after it's tarped. And then you want those pictures to overlap so there's no gaps of what happened on this space. So if you have, you have a milling machine here, don't just take that milling machine, back up and get the milling machine in the end of the lathe, so that when you take the lathe, you can relate those pictures together or back up and take both pictures. So, so that's what we do for our pictures. This is a customer-provided bill of lading. So your customer is doing the hiring the truck. We try to get the customer to supply us a bill of lading. We want the customer to be listed as the shipper. So let me look here because I can't see that from here. But up in the shipper area, they'll have the customer's name but our address. So you want the customer, if he's supplying the truck, to be listed as the shipper. Always, as the shipper, it should be who's paying for the freight. So if your customer's paying for the freight directly to the freight company, you want to make sure his name's there. Also, the declared value, item number 6, you want to make sure there's a declared value that is the right declared value in there. Make sure that the customer's doing that. This is a domestic bill of lading. Again, lots of different topics on the domestic bill of lading. So here we're talking about intercontinental, that would be Mexico, Canada. There's some information there on the custom broker and some more information on the equipment, models, and serial numbers. Same thing, this is for an international bill of lading. You'll need, there's a document, booking numbers, other stuff that's in there that you need to have on the bill of lading. Okay, customer release form. Customer release form is the customer bought a machine from you and he's sending his trucker in. So in the first area, the customer release form, that's where the customer is releasing it to the broker or the trucker that he hired. Does that really mean that that's who's going to show up to pick up that machine? No, it could be the broker gets it, he subs it out to somebody else, and he subs it out to somebody else. We want to make sure that on the first circled area, the carrier name, that you get the name of the broker, and if he reassigns it, then you get the name of the trucker picking it up. So example, we've had trucks come into our place, say, I'm here to pick up a machine for Minnesota. We've got a machine for Minnesota scheduled to go out. We put it on his truck. The guy goes down the road with it. Another truck shows up 2 hours later, said, I'm here to pick up a machine for Minnesota. And we said we already loaded it, and we get the customer on the line. He says, well, I was just getting prices from the other guy. That isn't who I wanted to send in. This is my guy. And this guy's $800 cheaper than that guy, so you need to pay me the difference because you loaded it on the wrong truck. And I can send you this form electronically so you have it to use and change. Some of the things that are important is obviously the dimensions and all that's important. We have declared value on here. We have an area, no humps, bumps, open wheel wells on trailers, decks, or reefers. If you've got a single drop coming in and it's got open wheel wells, and you're putting a machine on top of it, and they're tarping it, and they're going down the road, and it's salty, and that's going to just spray water all up and salt on your machine underneath that tarp. Also, if you're loading off a dock and you got a trailer that has open wheels in the back, that's a problem. A lot of times we might have stuff that's going in a van trailer, and a van trailer you can block or secure it in. If they send a reefer trailer in, it's got a metal floor, you're not blocking anything. So it's important that you do that. So we talked about declared value. We've got pickup times, delivery times, and then the most important is someone's got to sign this. So if they give you a rate, they got to sign this and send it back. That means they've agreed for whatever rate they give you to provide the services, including the insurance that you need. Okay?
Is that good enough with them returning it by email since they don't have a signature on it?
You can ask your attorney. We accept it by email. I'm sure that. And then there's the next part is the trucking confirmation. Just when you get it put on the truck and you send it to your customer, and your customer's got a rigger set up on the other end, you need to follow that truck. You need to talk to the trucking company every day. If it's going across the country, you want to make sure that you're following it, because ultimately when it doesn't show up and the guy's sitting there with a crane or a crew and everything like that. So this is just what we use is to check and follow up and make sure somebody's doing that. Doesn't necessarily have to be you, but it's got to be somebody in your organization following up with the carrier every day. When we do our bill of lading, we have the drivers, and most of the time they're not resistant, put their cell phone number right on the bill of lading. So we don't have to go through the chain of 3 different brokers to figure out where our load is. Okay, I'm going to touch real quickly on how do you pick a rigger. You just pick me. Histories and recommendations, same thing. Who do you have and what works? Asset-based company. You want companies that actually, depending on what you're doing. I mean, some equipment is more bulletproof if you're moving maybe a shear or a brake, and they could run into it a few times. They could drop it a couple times. Maybe it's not as sensitive, but you want an asset-based company. You want a company that owns their equipment. They're not just in a pickup truck. When you go to an auction sale or floor and there's 5 riggers there, and they all got tables, they all got banners, they all look alike. You got to be able to determine who is the right guy. A good friend of mine was a scrap man. I'll tell you this quick story. A good friend of mine was a scrap man, and he'd buy and sell scrap. And he showed up at a Delphi automotive plant, and he was now a rigger. And his banner says he's a rigger. And I said, what's different this week and last week, from you being a scrap man to being a rigger? He says, my $68 banner. So he did have insurance, he did have equipment, so you just have to know. Also, don't be afraid to Google Earth their address and their location. Find out, is it a house in the middle of Arkansas, or is it actually, do they have a facility? Check out their websites. If their websites are very generic and they don't show any pictures of their equipment or stuff with their name on it, then they probably built something. Also, another thing is when you're this cough is killing. When you're looking for riggers, crane companies will be listed as riggers. In most cases, crane companies are not machinery movers. They could be a rigger. They could do, columns and steel work and everything like that. You're really looking for machinery movers. So kind of separate in your mind when you start asking people. You're looking for machinery movers, not necessarily just a rigger. And although there are some crane companies that do have rigging departments, most crane companies aren't riggers. Aren't machinery movers. And then if you have something that you're very concerned, you've got a big machining center, you've got something that's got to come all apart, and you want to make sure the guy that's taking apart is going to match mark tag and do everything right, ask him how he's going to do it. But more than that, ask him for a price to reinstall it. Even if you're not reinstalling it, say, look, I've got a customer, give me an option on putting this back together in Cleveland or wherever you want to say. If the guy's not willing to give you a price to put it back together, you might not want to hire him to take it apart. There's also just as we have the MDNA here, there's an organization nationally, the Specialized Carriers and Riggers Association. They have a directory of qualified companies. Again, you got to sort through which ones are just the heavy transportation crane companies versus the machinery movers. But look in the national